Thank you. Thank you for that introduction, and I'll explain two things. One is the Old Crow Association, if anyone here is familiar with it. The code name in World War II for radar was Raven, and if you worked on that, you were known as a Crow. So afterwards, the electronic warfare folks were called Old Crows. And it's actually quite a large group of electronic warfare and electronic countermeasure folks. And the reason I wanted to mention that was Barry Goldwater gave an address, one major address, and the week before, he had given a briefing to the Navy pilots. And the Navy pilots are known as the tail hookers because the tail comes down and hooks the thing. So his wife said he would have expected him to be at a tail hookers convention, but not an Old Crows convention. So anyway, I wanted to tell everybody what we're trying to do is we're trying to get the word out about a project that we're working with that we think will greatly affect Western Maryland, and it's called the Cyber Warforce Accelerator. I'm going to give you some background about what it is and tell you how it operates and how it might benefit this area, and I'll field any questions as we go along. And by the way, if you have questions in the interim, just feel free to jump in. I'll try and make it as interactive. It's not that large a group. So we actually began, our company, Baltimore Cyber Range, or BCR Cyber, working with the state of Maryland. We were a bunch of defense contractors, and we went to Israel on an economic development mission with the state. We went with Commerce, Labor, and the governor's office. And what the Israelis do is very clever. They actually see a lot of threats. So they store the threats, catalog the threats, create what they call an attack generator, and they run attacks on a simulated network. Then they teach their folks how to detect, mitigate, and remediate those threats. That concept is a range. Now, cybersecurity is, I'm sure most of you are involved in cyber, understand that there's a lot of, not contradictory terms, but there's not a lot of regulation. It's so new that there's many different kinds of names, and the cyber range that we're talking about is a pure cyber range, and I'm going to get to why that's important in a minute. What we've been able to do with the cyber range is we were awarded a contract. Unfortunately, Kelly Schultz is here. She was the Secretary of Labor at the time, and she had the wisdom to give us a contract. And we actually got an EARN grant. And the way EARN works is if you get 50 people, if you train 50 people, and you get 80% of those jobs, you can get another one. We've done that about 19 times. We've trained about 2,000 people. We've got about 1,900 jobs since 2017, all in cyber. I'm going to tell you a little how we did that. The key to success is getting employers involved. So these are the employers that are actually part of our consortium. And these employers not only hire the trainees, which is important, but it's not the most important factor. The most important factor is that they tell us what to teach on the range. And we partner with the community college on that training, and I'm going to tell you about that in a minute. So are you all familiar with the MAC, the Maryland Association of Community Colleges? So we actually, back in 2017, trained all the faculty in every community college on cyber, and then each year we asked those faculty to send 5 of their students that are nearing completion to go through our training program, and then we'll get them jobs. And we did that, and you don't need an advanced degree in mathematics to know that's about 200 people a year. If each school sends about 5, you do it twice. Maryland is now currently open positions, not created positions, open positions. There's 30,000 in the cyber community. So we need to address that in a bigger way. So what we've done is we've proposed something that we call the accelerator. I'm going to tell you more about that in a minute. So the way we're going to work is the cyber range I discussed with you earlier that we have in Baltimore. We've been funded to put that capability in every community college. That includes Hagerstown, it includes Allegheny, and it includes Garrett. So by the 1st of April, those schools are all going to have a range available for their use to do workforce development and what the schools want to have. So the way we're going to do it is, it was funded in 3 different methods, but the state and the federal government funded it all. And each of the schools will have a range dedicated to their use, and that capability will be present hopefully for a long time. So I'll talk more about that. So now I want to get into a detailed discussion about what the range is so you'll understand it, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask. We actually have a targeted network. So we actually create a network. We create some mail servers, we create some Apache servers, we created a DMZ, and that is the network that is going to be what we will exploit. We then have a attack generator, which I mentioned earlier. And the attack generator typically works with the MITRE threat library and Metasploit. I don't know if you're all familiar with that term, but in effect, almost 85% of all threats are cataloged and available to us through Metasploit, which is a database that you can access with no cost. And we can generate scenarios based upon that database. In this case, we use our employers to tell us which is the best for Baltimore, or in that case Baltimore, but now we're going to work for Maryland. So all the community colleges will be able to access what's local to them. So if there's a hospital in Allegheny that has ransomware, we can actually simulate ransomware. And I'm going to talk more about how that would come about. But effectively that threat would be in the threat library, and then we would generate it and enters it to our system. We also have general traffic running in the system because you want to be able to differentiate between the actual traffic and the threat that you're trying to detect, mitigate, and remediate. So that said, we have tools, and the tools are very, very sophisticated. They're industry-grade tools. They're selected by our contractors, and our contractors and our employers are primarily government, defense, and intelligence community contractors, Northrop Grumman, Booz Allen, Use Network Systems, Motorola, and we have state-of-the-art tools that will be available in each of the community colleges. If you're familiar with SIMS, System Information Event Managers, we use Splunk, which is far and away the standard in U.S. government cybersecurity. So this will give entry-level students and trainees the ability to be current in the technologies that are vocationally acceptable to employers. From day one, you'll be able to get a job. That's the theory behind the way we set up the range. Okay, the new range that we have, we added something called Kali and Metasploit. Are you all familiar with Kali? Okay, and then you're familiar with Metasploit? Okay, so the reason we entered Kali and Metasploit, in the earlier ranges, it was very expensive to generate a new scenario. You had to go ahead and reset and develop. It was a lot of software, a lot of development time. With the advent of Metasploit and Kali, there's a lot of tools that are built in to those systems that do not require all that software development. So we can do a scenario inside of a week, as opposed to many cases it was 4 or 5 months to generate a scenario. That is relevant to vocational training, particularly if you're trying to get people ready to go on an upskill or at the entry level. Okay, so the type of tools that we're talking about, you can see that we have, these are operational in our scenarios, but we have pfSense, we have Palo Alto, we have routers, we use Splunk, we use Security Onion. These are all industry-wide, industry-recognized tools that we're not only teaching how they operate, but we're showing you them in the sense that you would if you were a pilot of a flight simulator. We're showing you an operation. If you have got the bad stuff thrown through your network, you're going to see how Security Onion, how pfSense, and how Splunk would treat that. And that training is all available at the community college level. So some of the other things that we do, we have at BCR Cyber, are you all familiar with FedRAMP? Have you heard of FedRAMP? FedRAMP effectively controls what is considered safe for cloud storage for the US government. So if the US government wants to take some of their data, maybe eliminate a NOC, a network operating center, and put it on Amazon or put it on Microsoft, Azure, or you want to put it on AWS, you can do that, but the government has to make sure it's safe from a cybersecurity perspective. So FedRAMP monitors that. FedRAMP is part of the GSA, it's a government agency. Those folks have to have a third-party assessment organization go out to that cloud. So if the IRS wants it, the IRS has to have a third-party assessment organization go out to the cloud, make sure the cloud's safe, assess the cloud, and then provide a report. and then FedRAMP adjudicates whether it's safe or not, and you can make the contract. The reason I say that is we do the proficiency testing for that assessment organization. So if you're an assessor, you have to pass our test on our range to be able to go ahead and do an assessment. That capability will also be present at the community college level as well. The appliances associated with that testing will be available, so the tests will be able to be administered at the community colleges as well as here at BCR Cyber. What's unique about that is there's another opportunity out there. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's called CMMC, which is the Cybersecurity Maturation Model Certification. What's unique about cyber, and CMMC is headquartered in Maryland. If you're an agency or a vendor of the Department of Defense, and there's 360,000 organizations, you have to be assessed within the next couple of years that you're safe to store data, or you will not be allowed to have contracts with the Department of Defense. That's all going to migrate eventually to the entire U.S. government, but the DoD far and away is the largest buying arm of the U.S. government. If you don't have that certification, you cannot get a contract. The assessors are the ones that will determine that. Now, they're not going to do 360,000 assessments, but they are going to do about 75 to 80,000 over the next 2 years. They're going to need 6,000 assessors is what they're projecting to get this job done in the next 24 months. The requirements to take that test, to be that assessor, requires 2 years experience, unless you have range experience. If you have the range experience that we put on the program, they waive the requirement that you have 2 years experience to be the assessor. You still have to pass the test. You still have to be competent, but you don't have to have 2 years experience. And the reason for that is CMMC, in their wisdom, determined that that's what the training is called experiential. So the range training is so vocationally functional that it can stand in place of actual time served in the job. Another major benefit to some of the younger students that haven't had time to get work but have spent time on the range, they can go right into industry without having to go through a long, protracted apprenticeship. Okay, another thing that we've done as part of this program is we do governance. Governance is a major part of the experience associated with cybersecurity. And the training associated with governance is hard to do because it's hard to get people involved in governance, particularly younger student, because it's not pen testing, it's not incident response. But you need to really understand your systems to understand where your vulnerabilities are and to what you can and cannot pass. So the range is a good opportunity to do governance training, and that range training will also be available in the ranges that we make available to the community colleges. So there are 2 current programs that currently exist that we have available, and these will be translated to each of the community colleges. One is the ACT program, the other is ICE-T, and I'm going to explain both of those in a second. The ICE-T program is a program that takes a student with no prior IT experience, no knowledge, and puts them through the rigors of becoming entry-level cyber. So what that involves is, for entry-level cyber, our consortium determines to be proficient and begin instruction in cybersecurity, you need to have 3 levels of proficiency. You're probably familiar with A+, which is a CompTIA certification, Network Plus, and then Security Plus. So you don't necessarily have to have those certifications to become a cyber guy or a cyber person, but you do need to be proficient in that technology. And more importantly, from the training perspective, you need to be proficient in those technologies so that you won't get lost on the range. Because the range is a group experience, and if you don't understand some of the terms of technologies, you may not know what has to be done, and you'll wind up inhibiting the rest of the process and the rest of the training. So we, as part of the ICE-T program, we will have A+ Network and Security Plus training available. In some cases, it depends upon the jurisdictions, the certifications will be covered also. What we're very excited about on the certification functions, and particularly in Western Maryland, is a large chunk of Western Maryland is a hub zone. Are you all familiar with hub zones in general? Briefly, HUB stands for Historically Underutilized Business area. And the reason it's exciting, and it's exciting not only to the state but to our employers, is that the U.S. government set aside contracts for hub zone workers. So if you have competent cyber folks that live in hub zone, which large portion of Allegheny, large portion of Washington, large portion of Garrett are considered hub zones, they then can allow companies like Northrop Grumman and Booz Allen to bid jobs that are set aside for hub zones. It makes them, it's a good business decision for those businesses to invest in that, and that's one of the reasons why we're going to offer that as well. But what we do is we do what the state likes to call employer-infused training. So everything that we put into the training that you see on the range is based upon what the employers have told us is necessary. It's not an academic experience. It's purely vocational. It's designed to capstone and complement the academic experience you might get in the community college. But again, it's purely vocational, and it makes our students much more savvy from an interviewing perspective because they can discuss with the interviewer technologies that most students aren't aware of because they haven't had the experience, at least not at the entry level. So again, what I was saying is the first part was it would be the A+ Network and Security Plus. Then we have, after we train to A+ Network and Security Plus, we'll be training at the journeyman level. And the journeyman level, that's our definition. That would mean that you now basically have IT proficiency, but you do not have cyber. So we're going to teach you about Linux, teach you about command line, we're going to teach you about the tools that exist in a cyber environment, in a SOC. Basically a SOC tool analyst. We're building you to that capability. And then once you've completed that, once you've had the A+ and network security, you've had the Linux, you've had the tool training, the basics of cyber, SOC tools, you're then ready to go on the range. And then those students in this program will go through a rigorous range training. We'll run through a couple actual scenarios. And they'll be judged how they detect, how they mitigate, and how they remediate the threat, working as a team in a cyber range. The ranges that you'll have at the community colleges will have observer stations. A range is set up with 10 stations. 5 are for the trainees and 5 are for observers. So your faculty or an employer that wants to hire you can actually observe you in a realistic habitat. We call it the NFL Training Combine of Cybersecurity, but that's just a kind of a misnomer. So, but it gives the employer an idea of who they're going to hire. And we have found in working this in Baltimore over that 5 or 6 year period that the reason that we have about 95% retention after 18 months is because the employers have vetted that employee so well that they were able to stay with the position they had. Okay, so I think just told about that. One of the other things that's nice from a standpoint of doing the right thing, and there's another reason to it, I'll tell you in a minute, is our diversity numbers are phenomenal. And that is based upon the community colleges. The community colleges serve underserved communities. So when we run our programs, we place 83% of the people who are trained. They actually complete the training, but 83% get jobs. 83% are people of color and 45% are women. These numbers are much, much higher than the cyber industry in general. I mean, the cyber industry in general, I think people of color are about 26%. Women are under 20. Okay, those are statistics that we've gotten through Maryland Cyber, through the state of Maryland. So we're very proud of that. What's driving this is not only is the right thing to do, which it is, but it's a monetary issue. Again, these large contractors need a diverse profile to be qualified to bid certain contracts. If this allows qualified, trained people that can do the job, that meet those socioeconomic qualifications, it's a win for this whole state. Because the state gets the revenue, the business gets the revenue, and we get people off the unemployment lines and get them working. Okay. The ACT program, again, is basically, it's the same thing as the IST program, but we assume that you already have A+ Network and Security Plus. This is particularly of interest to the community college folks that may be here. If you're in a cyber program and you have proficiency in A+ Network and Security, you can bypass that training, just get the range training, and you'll have a much better chance of getting entry-level position if you want. And even better, you'll have a qualitative understanding of what cyber really is. Not from a educational perspective, but from a vocational perspective. Okay. The other thing is the training that we go through is currently under review by the Maryland Blueprint. You may be familiar with that. All the training is currently being evaluated to be an industry recognized certification, similar to A+ Network and Security Plus. You'll get IRCs from this program, and those will be something that you can put on your resume, you can show as being something that shows you're proficient in cyber. So I think that effectively that's my formal presentation. I think that should give you a good idea of how the Cyber Accelerator is supposed to be vetted and how it's going to be rolled out. Does that foster any questions? Okay. Yes, Kelly.
So I think I heard that at the beginning, so we're talking about where we're going to be at the community colleges. When do those programs start, and are all of the colleges on the same track, or are the colleges out here represented different from?
Great question, great question. So we will have all of the ranges fully operational by the 10th of April, 2025. And that means that we can start beginning the projects. We have requested funding for operations that we expect to get before the first of the year, and then we can begin the training in April. But the actual infrastructure is now in place. The funding that we received for the ranges has happened. We've procured we're in the process of building them and putting them in and installing them now.
I'm going to get in trouble for asking too many questions.
Not at all.
Okay, so the students that are currently, let's say there's seniors in high school right now, and they're going to be taking classes in the spring, or is it on a semester basis? So is it a similar procedure for them to sign up for the cyber ranges as a semester class?
So I understand your question, and it's certainly a very good one. What I would answer is there are two aspects of the range that is in control of the educational institution. There is the vocational aspect and there is the academic aspect. The workforce development projects like ACT and like ICE-T, which are earned programs, will take about 15 to 20% of the range utilization time, leaving 75 to 80% for each school to do what it wants with it. We expect the schools to do a number of things, develop curriculum based upon having the range, developing laboratories having the range. We expect the schools to go after certain Department of Education, Department of Labor contracts because the range will be a differentiator, particularly for workforce development. So it's going to be up to the individual schools. But the actual programs we just discussed that are funded by the state, the ACT and the EARN type programs, that would take up roughly 1 month out of the 12 months the ranges will be available. Okay. Yes.
What if there are other companies? So you have your consortium right now. So maybe those consortium members might not be Western Maryland companies. If there are Western Maryland companies that want to be a part of that EARN consortium, how do they do that?
Okay, so the answer is the consortium is not exclusive. As long as they're willing to support, any corporation, any company can join the consortium. Any company can join it. We go out and solicit particular ones, but if you're an organization in Western Maryland that would like to join us, you're welcome to join and give us your inputs. That said, we have an arrangement and a memorandum of understanding with the Maryland Workforce Association, with MWA, with Brandon Butler and with Kirkland Murray, and the boards themselves are the ones that are going to determine at the local level which companies we'll be working with in terms of hiring, and we expect to develop apprenticeship programs, registered apprenticeship programs, utilizing the RTI function out of the range. The local boards, which were all under, as we understand it, under MWA. So we'll work through Brandon, but they'll actually be the ones telling us, they'll be telling us which of the various boards and which of the companies are interested, and we'll integrate them in and integrate the training based upon what they ask us to do. Yes, ma'am.
Are either one of these programs the new cyber programs that they have at Hagerstown, Allegheny, and Garrett?
Okay, so
So they're doing like a more in-depth program, is that a part of it?
this would be, yes. Well, let me rephrase that, because I don't know everything that's going on at Hagerstown, Allegheny, and Garrett, but I know that the Edwards grant, which is a grant,
Yes, that's the grant.
this is that grant.
Okay.
So this is, Hagerstown in particular was the first community college to actively solicit this. And so they're ahead of the curve. So we're much further along in getting them ready to go. But Hagerstown, Allegheny, and Garrett will be working together, and all those three will be probably operational before April, but no later than April.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Okay, well, thank you all very much. And again, we're anxious to help develop the workforce here in Western Maryland. And if any of these ideas or anything have you questions, please feel free to contact me. I think my contact name is in the book, and I'm happy to follow up.